Hello, everybody. I go by Soda or Soda Mario, and this is going to be episode 0 of my what I hope to complete series, going over me and my team's run through our first ever team based draft league. And so, our league, known as the BOU, is a team based draft league where numerous teams of 3 different players will battle each other each week in order to make playoffs. That's kind of the main goal everybody has, at least so far. And so, my team, known as the Delinquent Doug Trios. I was not the one who came up with that one. Is comprised of myself, Soda, and then we have our Dracofish enthusiast, known as Ordinary, and then we have the most aggressive Clodsire player known to mankind, known as Emilio. Now, going into the season, there are some incredibly crucial details I wanted to note. Almost every single Pokemon was given various buffs in regards to both their abilities and moves. So to give you kind of an example of what I mean, they gave Chiyu Desolate Land for fun. They give Chiyu Desolate Land. They gave Tornadus Therian. They gave him Gale Wings. This is the kind of Pokemon we're looking at in terms of what we're drafting, right? So a lot of Pokemon were given some pretty crazy buffs. Um, and as the series goes on, I'll share more and more of the buffs that we're kind of given. But for now, just keep that in mind. That's kind of the demons that we're dealing with. Now, in terms of the actual draft itself, that was kind of broken into 2 parts. There's a tiers aspect to it, and there's a points aspect to it. I think the important part to kind of note is that the tiers go from S through, I think, E. But the S tiers and the A tiers have limits as to how many you can actually draft Pokemon wise, mainly because those are the most broken Pokemon. So you kind of have a few different options. You can either draft like 2 S tiers and 2 A tiers, you can draft 1 S tier and 3 A tiers, or you can draft 4 A tiers. It's kind of hard to show because I don't have the editing skills to really show you what that looks like, but you kind of get the gist. It's not too complicated. So, me and the boys kind of felt that the more S tier Pokemon we could get, the better, because they were exceptionally strong, especially compared to the rest of the Pokemon within the draft. So, we wanted 2 S tier Pokemon that really synergized well with each other and support each other in a more offensive manner. And so, the first 2 Pokemon we picked to kind of fill out that role was Thunder was Thundurus and Urshifu Rapid Strike. Now, I think it makes more sense to go through Thundurus first. So, Thundurus was given the ability Drizzle, right, which is pretty insane, because that gives, well, first of all, this gives us our team access to rain, period. And weather, especially in draft, is always pretty strong. Definitely something you have to watch out for. And this works especially well on Thundurus, because it now has access to Hurricane. On top of that, it has Stab Thunder, that's always going to be accurate because it sets up its own rain. But in terms of buffs beyond just the ability, it was also given better physical coverage because it also has Bolt Strike now. It has Volt Tackle as well. Or not Rising Voltage. Volt Tackle. And things like that. So now it has better coverage. It's a rain setter. And it was given these 2 moves, so offensively, this Pokemon's a beast. Plus, it having that base 111 speed stat is also really nice. So this was kind of the first Pokemon we paired up with. And since it was a Rainmon, we wanted a really strong Rain Abuser, so this is kind of where Urshifu Rapid Strike comes into play. Now, in singles, Unseen Fist is pretty useless, so they gave 2 new abilities that really matter, which is Iron Fist or Scrappy. So Scrappy is really good because you have Scrappy and Stab close combat, which is pretty insane, which works really well in like choice scarf sets and stuff like that. Typically, how you be like a choice, like a scarf close combat Pokemon is with the Ghost type. Can't really do that with this Pokemon. On top of that, it was also given Iron Fist. Now, Iron Fist boosts all of its punching moves. So this includes anything like Thunder Punch, also Surging Strikes, which is huge. Because now, its signature ability, which always crits, is super strong. It's boosted by this, it's boosted by Thunderous Rain, which is where the synergy part comes in, and overall, it's just pretty insane. In terms of the moves that it was given, though, it wasn't given that many new, just like straight up moves, but it was given a large array of priority moves. So now it has things like Bullet Punch. It has things like Mach Punch. It's got uh I think these are the two main ones. Bullet Punch and Mach Punch are pretty insane just because it also again gets boosted by Iron Fist. Also keep in mind Punching Glove is a pretty common move or pretty common item on Urshifu because Rocky Helmet chips it down really hard. So this also boosts these. It's pretty insane, right? So this mon's pretty insane, especially under rain. Surging Strikes doesn't really have a switch in unless it's like a water immunity. Like it's pretty insane. Um, so with these two kind of pieces to the squad, right? We wanted to build a defensive core that could support these two and make sure they get them into position. And so for our first pick, we actually grabbed Fortress. Now Fortress was a C tier Pokemon and it was also pretty cheap, but we saw it early on that like for the value it offered, it was kind of cheap, so we went for it. And it actually synergizes with this really well because its only weakness is fire, which is neutralized to an extent by the rain, right? So that's already really good. But then it also has access to every single hazard in the game. I'm talking spikes. I'm talking stealth rock. I'm talking toxic spikes and sticky web. It also gets sticky web now, and it got. I think it got like a new ability. It doesn't really matter though. Sturdy is almost always going to be what you run, and I think it also got Silk Trap, which is better than Protect. It works well on like leftover sets if you want to like kind of run it that way. But overall, this synergizes really well with the rain. On top of that, it's an incredibly strong physical wall with a whopping 140 base defense. So pretty strong in that department as well. Steel types are always good because there's a lot of dragons in the format. Overall, pretty good pick that we got for that. On top of that, these two kind of have hard time positioning in. This has slow volt switch. So that's pretty huge because it can also just like come in on like a dragon type or whatever, get its hazards up, volt switch out, go into one of these absolute monsters, and then it's just free reign from there. Now, from here, we got our physical wall. We wanted a special wall, especially defensive Pokemon. So this is where we drafted Sylveon. Yay, Sylveon. So, in terms of the buffs that Sylveon got, she wasn't given many new tools, but she was given a few very powerful tools. As a new ability, it was given Fairy Aura. Now, this Pokemon already has some pretty good fairy moves in Dazzling Gleam and Draining Kiss and stuff like that, and even Moonblast. But the people who balance it said no, that's not enough. Let's give her Sparkly Swirl. So for those of you who don't know what Sparkly Swirl is, it was a move introduced in Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. And it's a 120 base power fairy move that also acts as a healing bell if it lands. It's like 85% accurate. So I think with Fairy Aura, it's boosted to like 156 or something crazy like that. And off of Stab and the 110 base special attack, it's an absolute monster. But honestly, that's not even its best part. With this really good special bulk of 130 and 95, it's a really good special tank, and honestly, it's just really good at doing stuff like Wish Pass, right? So Wish Baton Pass is really strong. It allows for these Pokemon to like trade damage for damage. I switch into Sylveon, I Wish up, Baton Pass, swap out, go back into them, and we're kind of cooking, right? It's super good, super strong. One with Protect, it's really hard to break through because you just Wish Protect, you can give it leftovers, you can give it heavy duty boots. It's pretty insane. So these two combined to build a really good kind of defensive core. They both have pivot, so they can switch into our strong offensive two here. And this is kind of where we started the draft. Now from here, right, the one thing that we kind of noticed was the team's pretty slow, right? You have so you have base 60 here, base 40 here, 97's all right, and then 111 is good, but it's not insane, right? Typically, you want to at least have something like 120 or above. On top of that, we have our steel, we have our fairy, we're one piece off of the infamous Dragon Steel Fairy core. So we wanted to look for a fast dragon type, and we were also allowed one mega. So this is where we drafted Mega Sceptile. Now, Mega Sceptile not only finished the core, but also gave us an incredible speed tier of 145. But beyond the stats, it was also given pretty good amount of buffs. It was given U-turn, which is pretty huge. U-turn is amazing for this Pokemon because now 145, almost nothing in the game is going to outspeed this unless it's like boosted with Scarf or something. So this is one of the fastest U-turners in the entire game. On top of that, they also gave it setup with growth. They gave it, let's see, so they gave it growth, they gave it Trailblaze, and that's like for setup, Trailblaze, stuff like that. They also gave it some pretty good, strong like stab options with grass and Seed Flare and Chloroblast. Keep in mind, Chloroblast. Do I not know how to spell Chloroblast? There we go. This is like 150. This is like 125. Pretty huge stabs, and they also just gave it Jungle Healing. Jungle Healing cures any status and just heals it up, so that's pretty good for longevity as well. But no, as an attacker though, it does pair very nicely with Urshifu, because Urshifu has that water attack with the really strong Searching Strikes, Iron Fist boosted 130. On top of that, now you have a very fast special attacker with Grass and Dragon, right? So you have the two kind of. So now we have this kind of like triple core that all do really well attacking wise, very good defensive core. This was a very nice start to the draft. We also hadn't been sniped at this point either. So from here, again, we were kind of running the speed issue where we had like Sceptile and Thundurus, but again, the team was still overall kind of slow, and since we are a rain team, we wanted to have two Swift Swimmers. That was what we agreed on. We wanted two Swift Swimmers. So the two that we ended up picking was Swampert base form and Overquill. Now to kind of go for one at a time here, Swampert, as you can guess, because as you can see, it doesn't have it here, they gave it Swift Swim. Swift Swim is pretty huge just because base 60 isn't that strong, isn't that fast, but with Swift Swim doubling the speed, it's fucking insane speed-wise. But also, it got some pretty crazy attacks. We have Wave Crash now. We also have Headlong Rush. These are incredibly strong stab options to give Swampert, especially under rain. It becomes this offensive beast of a Pokemon. On top of that, they gave it Jet Punch for really strong priority. And keep in mind, we have a Rain Setter. So, not many things are going to switch into, when this thing sets up Drizzle, you come back, you go into Swampert, this thing's got Swift Swim Wave Crash. Not many things are going to swap into that, right? On top of that, what's really good about Swampert is, okay, it's a monster under Swift Swim, but also, it doesn't have to run that. It still has Stealth Rocks. It still has Stealth Rocks. It still has Toxic. On top of that, like, its bulk is really nice. 190 is really good on both stats. So it can be a bulky slow mon with, like, leftovers, or it can be, like, a super crazy mon with, like, Choice Band, right? Either or, this thing is going to be a beast. We really did like how it can have that kind of hybrid role where it can be defensive or offensive depending on what we needed for the matchup that week. So this was going to be our first kind of prioritized Swift Swim user. And one thing to note is I mentioned earlier that we had to draft 2 A tiers and 2 S tiers. So these two were our S tiers, Thundurus and Urshifu, and then our A tiers were Sceptile and Swampert. Also cool that they're both. Oh god, is it Gen? Gen 3 starters. Yeah. Gen 3, Gen 3. Oh god. I was forgetting for a sec. But okay. I digress. Moving on to our second Swift Swim Pokemon, we have Overquill. Now, Overquill, again, gives us our second one, but it's also our grounded poison type of the team. Because every draft team needs a grounded poison type. No matter what happens, you need it. If you don't have it, you're going to get run by Toxic Spikes the entire season. It's not a great time. Here's our grounded poison type of the season. Now, in terms of buff, it was given 2 abilities beyond just the 3 that it already has, which was Iron Barbs and Aftermath. So these are 2 really good abilities at just chipping things down. There are a lot of Pokemon in this format that are very frail attackers. So if you're able to kind of chip them down with Aftermath and Iron Barbs, and then maybe come in with like a Jet Punch from here, or maybe like a Bullet Punch or Mach Punch from here, it becomes like a really good supporting piece to the offensive pieces as well. On top of that, in terms of supporting moves, they also helped it out. They gave it Baneful Bunker so it can spread poison around while being protected. They also gave it Mortal Spin, which gives us, again, another guaranteed way to spread poison, but also removal, which is something we're kind of lacking. We have Rapid Spin here, and we also have like Defog on Thundurus, but having Mortal Spin as well really rounds out the removal category very nicely for us. Like, this was a very strong addition to its set. But even if you don't want to go supportive, it has Fillet Away now. So now it has an option to set up as well, and again, has Swift Swim. So if we want to give it Fillet Away and Swift Swim, that's pretty insane. Because Fillet Away, I believe... Let me double check. Right. So it boosts its attack and speed by 2. So plus 2 speed with like Intimidate allows it to really like set up pretty easily in front of like offensive mons. Or if we just want to make sure it speeds out literally everything in the game, we use some and Fly Away. On top of that, it also gets Bulk Up as well. So those were the 2 kind of offensive pieces it gained. So at this point, we have these 2 hybrid mons that work really well in the rain. We have our defensive core. We have a variety of really good attackers, all of which really have pivot, because you have Baton Pass here, Volt Switch here, Flip Turn, U-Turn. I think Overquill has Flip Turn. Literally everything at this point has pivot, so it's incredibly easy to kind of shift this team around and move it how you want. And honestly, this was kind of the majority of what the draft went into. At this point, we were kind of running low on points, but our type chart was kind of struggling. So if we kind of look at everybody here, beyond Thundurus, we don't have a Flying Resist, and it's really easy to just spam Hurricane in the rain, so we didn't want to worry about that too much because, well, Thundurus is a Flying Resist. It's kind of a fake one because it doesn't have recovery, and it's, it's meant to be an attacker slash, like, pivoter, so it doesn't really want to take all that damage. And as such, for our quad flying resist, on top of a few other resists that it has, we drafted Magneton. So Magneton gives us a couple of different things. One, it was given Levitate as an ability. So now that crippling quad ground weakness, it just doesn't have it anymore. So now it's just essentially, type-wise, a steel type with Levitate, which is insane. On top of that, it's weak to fire. JK, we have the rain, so that boils it out too. So defensive, like type-wise, a phenomenal Pokemon. Beyond that, it was also given, beyond Levitate, it was also given Motor Drive, which I guess gives us an electric immunity. It's not that great. Most of the time, if not all the time, you're going to be running Levitate on this Pokemon. Beyond that, it is a really strong wall against, because again, there's so many incredibly strong dragon types in this format. So having a Pokemon that can kind of come in and tank those hits really well, because again, with Eviolite, this thing is incredibly bulky. 95 and 70, like plus 1.5, it's quite a bit a lot. And 120 special attack is definitely nothing to sneeze at either. So it's Volt Switches. Yes, we have another Pivoter. on top of like flash cannon and stuff like that is pretty strong. And it also has magnet pull, which is a pretty tricky thing that you can do if I want to like trap a steel type in or something like that. So overall, pretty strong defensive type. Really patches a lot of the holes that this team has. Type wise, pretty good addition to the team. And from here, now we're just kind of scraping the barrel at the bottom. We spent most of our points at this point because, again, the two S tiers and the two A tiers were very expensive, so we didn't have any points left, but we were missing two different things. One, we didn't have a ghost type, and two, we didn't have a normal type. So the normal ghost kind of concept in draft, we're kind of lacking on. So we wanted a pretty decent ghost type, and a certain member of the group, I won't spoil who it is, you know who you are, really, really, really wanted this Pokemon, so we ended up drafting it. It's Sinistra. So Sinistra was actually given quite a pretty good amount of new tools. It got Vessel of Ruin, which is really good for its bulk because pretty strong physical bulk. Special bulk isn't bad, it's not great. Vessel of Ruin makes it incredibly bulky. On top of that, it's got weak armor in case it wants to like set up. It's also got let's see, weak armor. It was also given Levitate and Curse Body, which are pretty niche, but they might be good in certain matchups. Beyond that though, it got a couple of different things added to its move pool. So it got Burning Jealousy, because it's T. That's pretty funny. It gives it Fire, which is pretty cool. Because now it has Scald, Gacha, and Burning Jealousy, so having that Fire, Water, Grass coverage in one Pokemon is pretty cool. But beyond that, it was given Sleep Powder in case we feel like being gambling addicts for the week. And then it was also given one more in Strange Steam, which fairy coverage is always nice. Again, this Pokemon, it probably won't be brought too many times, but it definitely has its moments where it can set up. Moving on to our normal type, we decided for Type Null. At this point, we only really had 1 point left. And Battle Armor was pretty good because a lot of things in this format have like Wicked Blow and Surging Strikes, which like always crit. So that's nice. And with Eviolite and its defenses, which are again pretty solid, especially for a not fully evolved Pokemon, it's all pretty good. And like given with Eviolite, like, if there's a offensive team that's like centralized around like a really strong ghost type, this thing can shut it down with ease. And it doesn't have any moves apparently. I don't think it was actually given any buffs in terms of moves. I can double check that. If it did, it's not really important. At this point, the draft was essentially complete. Right? These were all the Pokemon that we really wanted. These were going to be the cores that we built around. And then last minute, our mod says, "Hey guys, oops, sorry, my bad. I forgot you have 5 extra points left. Have fun." So we got to draft another Pokemon just for shits and giggles. And the mod said, "You should draft Meowstic." So we did. And Meowstic, it doesn't have much going for it. It was given Neuroforce, which is pretty cool. And it was also given Sheer Force, which is actually really strong. On top of that, it was given Psycho Boost, which is an insane move to give it if it can hit it. And though this Pokemon probably won't be brought many times, like Psychic, like if he has like a Psychic weak team, then like am I losing my mind right now? Psychic, yeah, like Psychic boosted Psychics, or no, what am I saying? Sheer Force boosted Psychics are pretty insane, especially coming off. Oh, I didn't have the greatest stat, but if you get like Life Orb or even Choice Specs, like this is doing a lot of damage, especially if the team's not prepped for it at all. Like put this thing under webs from like Fortress, and this thing's putting in mad work. So again, it's a pretty niche Pokemon, but it could end up putting in a lot of work if put in the right position. So it's a nice addition to the team. It adds us just another offensive layer that we can go for. So to kind of recap what we have so far, we have this basically pretty strong rain team with this pretty offensive core supported by a defensive core and two swimmers, and then our low pointers kind of fill out those gaps and we have in the type matchup chart with Magneton helping with the flying weakness, Sinistra giving us our ghost type, type Null giving us our normal type, and then Meowstic for fun, just because the Pokemon's cool. And beyond that, I would say that's it. With this being with this being our team's first ever draft league, it's kind of unclear how we'll perform, but we're all pretty solid players, and we all have pretty good faith in this team. So, I mean, that's just where it is. I think we're gonna do well. There were some buffs and additions I didn't really mention here because I didn't feel they were very relevant. But in the description below, I am going to have the pace that has every single buff that all the Pokemon were given, just for those at home who want to keep track of everything and are just curious. But beyond that, I would say that's it for episode 0. Hope y'all have a great day, and I will see y'all in hopefully our week 1 breakdown soon, because our week 1 match was played, and I will be going over that. But for now, that is all from me. I will see you guys later.